The morning mist was lifting off Lake Simcoe when I first noticed something was wrong. I stood at the end of my dock, coffee in hand, watching a pair of loons glide across the glassy surface. October in Ontario. The maples along the shoreline were burning red and gold, and the air had that clean, sharp smell that comes just before the first frost. This cottage, 2 hours north of Toronto, had been in my family for 43 years. My parents bought it in 1981, back when you could still get waterfront property for what seemed like nothing. After they passed, after my wife Helen died 3 years ago from ovarian cancer, after I retired from 31 years managing a parts plant in Oshawa, this place became everything to me. 800 square feet of pine paneling, a stone fireplace, a screened porch where I'd spend evenings reading. The real estate agents who'd occasionally send me letters called it quaint. I called it home. I'd been up here for 5 months straight. No mortgage, no debt, just me and the lake and the quiet. I was learning to be alone without being lonely, learning what it meant to wake up and have the whole day belong to me. I thought I'd figured it out, this retirement thing, the peaceful exit everyone dreams about. Then my phone rang. The number looked familiar, but I couldn't place it. Toronto area code. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something, maybe habit from all those years answering emergency calls from the plant, made me pick up. Dad. The voice was warm, friendly, the kind of voice that came with a smile. It's Trevor Aldridge, Helen's son from her first marriage. I'd known Trevor since he was 14, helped raise him through high school, paid for part of his college. He'd called me Dad since the wedding, even though we both knew I wasn't his biological father. Helen had always been grateful for that. Trevor had always been, well, charming. Maybe a bit too charming. Trevor, I said, how are you? Good, really good actually. Hey, I heard you're staying at the cottage full-time now. That's great, Dad. Really healthy, you know. After everything with Mom, there was something in his tone. That uptick at the end of sentences, like he was building towards something. It's been good, I said carefully. So listen, I wanted to run something by you. An opportunity, actually. You know, I've been getting into real estate investing, right? Flipping properties, short-term rentals, that kind of thing. I did know. Trevor had been in and out of various business ventures for the past decade. Helen used to worry about it privately, late at night when it was just the two of us. She'd say he had champagne taste on a beer budget, that he was always one deal away from making it big. I remember, I said. Right, so here's the thing. I've got investors lined up for this incredible opportunity. Luxury short-term rental market in cottage country. Huge demand. People from the city desperate to unplug. I just need one more property to complete the portfolio, and I was thinking the Lake Simcoe cottage would be perfect. I looked out at the water. A blue heron was picking its way along the shoreline, hunting in the shallows. Trevor, this cottage is my home. I'm not interested in turning it into a rental business. Oh, I totally get that. But hear me out. You wouldn't have to do anything. I'd manage everything. Cleaning, booking, maintenance. You'd get 30% of the profits. Passive income, Dad. And you could still use it in the off-season. The answer's no, Trevor. This place means too much to me. There was a pause. Mom would have wanted you to help me, you know. Family helping family. That's what she always said. There it was. The pivot to Helen. The gentle pressure disguised as sentiment. Helen wanted a lot of things, I said, keeping my voice level. But this cottage stays as it is. I'm sorry. Okay. His voice had changed slightly. Still friendly, but with an edge now. Well, that's disappointing. I was really counting on this, but I guess I'll figure something else out. Talk soon, Dad. He hung up. I stood there for a while, phone in my hand, watching the heron hunt. Something didn't sit right. The way he'd said he was counting on it. The assumption that I'd just go along with it. The investors he'd mentioned. As if the deal was already in motion. I went inside and made more coffee. Told myself I was overthinking it. Trevor was 39 years old, a grown man with his own life. He'd asked, I'd said no. It was done. 4 days later, I got a call from Judith Peterson, my neighbor 2 cottages down. Judith and her husband Frank had been coming up here since before my parents bought our place. They usually closed up for the winter after Thanksgiving, but they'd come back for the weekend to winterize their dock. Tom, Judith said, her voice tight with concern, I wasn't sure if I should call, but there's been some activity at your place. Activity? A young couple. They've been there for 3 days. I saw them moving furniture around, hanging things on the porch. I thought maybe you'd rented it out for the season. But Frank said that didn't sound like you. My chest went cold. What kind of furniture? Outdoor stuff, mostly. String lights, new chairs. They had a car parked in your driveway. White SUV. Ontario plates. I wrote them down, just in case. She read them to me. Judith, I didn't rent to anyone. I don't know who these people are. Oh, Tom. I was afraid of that. Do you want me to call the OPP? No, not yet. Let me make some calls first. But thank you, really. After we hung up, I pulled up the cottage on Google Maps, switched to Street View, even though I knew it wouldn't show me anything current. Then I remembered the security camera I'd installed last summer after there'd been some break-ins in the area. Basic setup, motion activated, linked to my phone. I'd barely checked it since installing it. I opened the app. The last motion had been triggered 2 hours ago. I scrolled back through the footage. There they were. A young couple, maybe late 20s. The woman was blonde, carrying grocery bags from the food land in Aurelia. The man was tall, wearing a Raptors hoodie, setting up a barbecue on my deck. My deck. My cottage. People I'd never seen before. I called Trevor. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Voicemail. On the third try, he picked up. Hey, Dad, kind of in the middle of something. Can I call you back? Who are the people staying at my cottage? Silence. Then, what? There are people at my cottage. 2 of them. Moving furniture, grilling on my deck. Who are they, Trevor? Oh, he exhaled slowly. Okay, look, I was going to tell you. They're friends of mine, Connor and Brielle. They needed a place for a few weeks while their condo renovation gets finished. I said they could crash at the cottage. I figured you wouldn't mind, since you're down in the city right now. I'm not in the city. I'm 40 minutes away, at a friend's place in Barrie. And I absolutely do mind. You had no right to let anyone stay there. Dad, come on. They're good people. They're keeping the place warm. You should be thanking me, honestly. An empty cottage in winter, that's when pipes freeze, when vandals break in. This way someone's looking after it. Trevor, those people are trespassing. I want them gone. Today. That's going to be difficult. They signed a lease. A lease? On my property? You can't sign a lease for property you don't own? Actually, I can. I'm on the deed, remember? Mom added me years ago for estate planning purposes. My hand tightened on the phone. Helen had added Trevor to the cottage deed 15 years ago, when we were doing estate planning after her cancer diagnosis. The lawyer had suggested it as a way to avoid probate, but it was supposed to be a technicality, a legal convenience. Helen had made him promise it was just paperwork, that the cottage would always be mine. Being on the deed doesn't give you the right to lease out my home without my permission. I think you'll find it gives me exactly that right, Dad. I'm a co-owner. I can do what I want with my share. Your share? Trevor, I've lived here full-time for 5 months. Your mother and I paid the property taxes for 20 years. This cottage was gifted to both of us under Mom's will. Check the documents. 50-50 ownership. I've been generous, letting you stay there rent-free, honestly. But now I need to monetize my asset. Monetize your... I couldn't finish the sentence. Trevor, what's going on? Are you in some kind of trouble? I'm fine. I'm just tired of letting opportunities slip away because of sentimental attachments. Connor and Brielle are paying me $2,000 a month. That's my money, from my half of the property. You can still use your half. That's not how this works. I think it is. And Dad? Don't go up there and harass my tenants. That would be illegal. He hung up. I sat in Frank and Judith's guest room, where I'd been staying while visiting old colleagues from the plant, and felt the world tilt sideways. I called my lawyer, Patricia Chen, who'd handled Helen's estate. She was semi-retired now, only taking on occasional clients, but she'd always told me to call if I needed anything. Tom, she said, her voice warm. "How are you holding up?" I told her everything. She was quiet for a long moment. "Okay, this is complicated. If Trevor is on the deed as a joint tenant with rights of survivorship, he technically does have ownership rights. But leasing the property without your consent, while you're living there as your primary residence, that's murkier. We need to look at the original deed, the will, and any other documentation. Can he really do this? In theory, yes. In practice, it depends on how the ownership was structured and whether there are any agreements in writing about usage. Tom, I need to ask, is there any chance Trevor forged your signature on something? A lease agreement? A rental contract? Anything? I haven't signed anything. I'll pull the land registry records. Give me 24 hours. In the meantime, don't confront the tenants directly. That could make things worse. But document everything. Photos, videos, communications with Trevor. We're building a case here. After we hung up, I drove up to the cottage. Took the back roads from Barry, the route I knew by heart. It was late afternoon when I pulled onto the gravel road, past the cedar trees my father had planted in 1985. My cottage looked the same from the outside, but different. There were new solar lights lining the pathway. A welcome mat I didn't recognize. The white SUV Judith had mentioned parked where I always parked my truck. I didn't knock. I used my key. The door opened into a living room that barely looked like mine anymore. The furniture had been rearranged. There were throw pillows on the couch, a different rug, candles on the mantel. The smell was wrong, too. Some kind of vanilla air freshener instead of the wood smoke and pine I was used to. The blonde woman, Brielle, came out of the kitchen, holding a glass of wine. She screamed when she saw me. "Who the hell are you?" she shouted. "I'm Tom Howell. I own this cottage." "No, you don't. Trevor owns this cottage. He's our landlord. You need to leave right now, or I'm calling the police." "Call them," I said, "because you're trespassing on my property." Connor came out of the bedroom, phone already in his hand. "Dude, you need to get out. This is our place. We have a lease." "Show me the lease." Brielle grabbed her phone, pulled up a document, shoved it toward me. I read it quickly. A 6-month lease agreement for the property at 187 Lakeshore Road, signed by Trevor Aldridge as property owner, and by Connor Chambers and Brielle Hoffman as tenants. First and last month's rent paid. $4,000. "This isn't legal," I said. "Trevor doesn't have the authority to lease this property without my consent." "That's between you and Trevor," Connor said. "We have a legal lease. We paid our money. You can't just kick us out." "I can and I will. We're calling the cops." "Go ahead." They did. 20 minutes later, an OPP cruiser pulled into the driveway. Constable Martina Davies got out, looked at the three of us standing on the porch, and sighed like she'd seen this exact scene too many times before. "All right," she said. "Someone want to tell me what's going on?" Everyone started talking at once. Constable Davies held up her hand. "One at a time." "Sir?" She looked at me. I explained. "The cottage was mine, had been my family's for 40 years. I lived here full time. These people had moved in without my knowledge or permission." "Do you have documentation proving ownership?" she asked. "It's on the deed. I can pull it up on the land registry." "And you two?" She turned to Connor and Brielle. "You have a lease?" They showed her the document on Brielle's phone. Constable Davies read it carefully. "This is a civil matter," she said finally. "The lease appears legitimate on its face. You're claiming you're the owner. They're claiming they're legitimate tenants. This needs to be sorted out in court. Nobody's getting arrested today." "So they just get to stay in my house?" I said. "Until you get a court order, yes. If you try to forcibly remove them or their belongings, you could be charged." "I'm sorry, sir. I know this isn't what you want to hear, but my hands are tied." She left. Connor and Brielle went inside, locked the door. I heard the deadbolt slide into place. I stood there on the porch I'd rebuilt with my father in 1994, looking through the window at strangers living in my home, and felt something break inside me. I drove back to Barry, checked into a Holiday Inn, and called Patricia Chen again. "They're in the cottage," I said. "The police won't remove them." "I pulled the land registry records," Patricia said. "Tom, there's something you need to know. The deed was modified 6 months ago. Trevor filed paperwork changing the tenancy from joint tenants to tenants in common. That means you each own 50%, but as separate shares. He's also registered a lien against the property. A lien? For what? Unpaid debt. He claims you owe him $75,000. There's a promissory note attached, dated 2 years ago, with your signature. I never signed any promissory note. Tom, I need you to look at this. She emailed me a scanned document. I opened it on my phone. There was my signature, clear as day, on a promissory note acknowledging a loan from Trevor to me for $75,000 to be repaid within 24 months or secured against my share of the cottage. That's not my signature, I said. I mean, it looks like it, but I never signed this. I never borrowed money from Trevor. That's what I thought. Tom, I think Trevor's been planning this for a while. The lien gives him leverage to force a sale of the property. If you can't pay the $75,000, he can petition the court to sell the cottage and take his share plus the debt from the proceeds. So I lose everything. Not if we can prove fraud. But we need evidence. Do you have samples of your signature? Bank documents? Old tax returns? Anything we can use for comparison? I have boxes of old paperwork at the cottage, but I can't get to them now. What about financial records? Anything showing you didn't receive $75,000 from Trevor 2 years ago? I have my bank statements. I can pull those up online. Do that. Send me everything from the past 5 years. We need to build a timeline showing this loan never existed. I spent the next 3 hours in that hotel room, downloading bank statements, credit card records, tax returns. Nothing showed a $75,000 deposit. Nothing showed any financial transaction with Trevor beyond the occasional birthday check Helen and I used to send him. I sent it all to Patricia. Then I sat on the edge of the hotel bed and tried to understand how it had come to this. Trevor, who'd been part of my life for 25 years, who'd called me Dad, who'd cried at Helen's funeral and told me I was the best stepfather he could have asked for, that Trevor was stealing my home. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but I was so tired of not answering calls. Mr. Howell? A woman's voice, professional, clipped. This is Sandra Kwan from First National Bank. I'm calling about your mortgage payment. We haven't received October's payment, and you're now 30 days overdue. I don't have a mortgage. The cottage is paid off. Has been for 15 years. Sir, our records show a mortgage was taken out on the property at 187 Lakeshore Road 6 months ago. $400,000. You're listed as one of the co-borrowers. I couldn't breathe. I never took out a mortgage. I'm looking at the application right now. Your signature is on file. The money was deposited into account number ending in 7,743. Is that not your account? No. I don't know that account. This is fraud. Someone forged my signature. Sir, if you're claiming fraud, you'll need to file a police report and contact our fraud department. But in the meantime, the payment is still due. November's payment will be due in 2 weeks as well. If we don't receive payment, we'll begin foreclosure proceedings. She gave me a number for the fraud department and hung up. I sat there holding the phone, feeling like I was underwater, like the whole world had gone liquid and strange. Trevor hadn't just moved tenants into my cottage. He'd mortgaged it, $400,000. Against property, he'd manipulated his way into controlling. And now the bank wanted their money. Money I didn't have. Money I'd never even seen. I called Patricia Chen for the 3rd time that day. He mortgaged it, I said. $400,000. Forged my signature on the mortgage documents. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was hard. Tom, this is beyond civil dispute now. This is criminal fraud. We need to contact the OPP Fraud Division. And we need to move fast. Because if that mortgage goes into default, you could lose the cottage before we can prove what he did. How do we prove it? Handwriting analysis. Forensic document examination. We show the bank that your signature was forged, that you never received any of that money, that Trevor acted alone. But it takes time. Weeks? Maybe months? The bank won't wait that long. So what do I do? In the short term, you might have to make the mortgage payments to protect the property. I know that's not fair. Patricia, I'm living on a pension. I don't have mortgage payment money. I retired specifically because the cottage was paid off. Then we file an injunction. We ask the court to freeze all proceedings on the property until we can sort out the fraud claim. It's not guaranteed, but it's your best shot. I spent that night in the Holiday Inn, not sleeping, just staring at the ceiling and trying to figure out where it had all gone wrong. Had there been signs? Moments when Trevor had shown me who he really was and I'd just missed them? Or had this been planned from the moment Helen died, maybe even before? Had he been waiting, patient and smiling, for his chance? The next morning, Patricia filed an emergency injunction. That afternoon, I got a call from Trevor. Dad, what the hell? You filed a court injunction against me? You forged my signature. On a mortgage, on a promissory note. You stole $400,000 using my name. That's a lie. You signed those documents. You were there. You just don't remember because you're getting old. Honestly, I'm worried about you. This paranoia, these accusations, it's not normal. I think you might need to see someone. A doctor, maybe. I remember everything, Trevor. I remember never signing anything. I remember you calling me 4 days ago trying to turn my cottage into a rental. I remember you moving strangers into my home without permission. My home too, Dad. 50% mine. Mom left it to both of us. Helen left it to me. You were added to the deed for probate purposes only. You know that. That's not what the lawyer said. That's not what the deed says. And honestly, Mom knew what she was doing. She knew I'd need something after she was gone. She knew you'd taken care of. You had your pension, your savings. I had nothing. This cottage, it's my inheritance. And I'm finally claiming it. By stealing from me? By claiming what's mine. And if you keep fighting me on this, Dad, I'll make sure everyone knows how confused you've gotten. How you can't remember signing documents, can't manage your finances. I'll get a medical assessment. I'll show you're not competent to handle your own affairs. And then I'll be appointed your guardian, and I'll make decisions for you, including selling that cottage and putting you somewhere safe. Somewhere you'll be looked after. The line went dead. I sat in my truck in the Holiday Inn parking lot, hands shaking. He'd threatened to have me declared incompetent, to have me institutionalized, to take not just the cottage, but my entire autonomy, my dignity, everything Helen and I had worked for. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about power, about Trevor proving he could take whatever he wanted, that no one would stop him, that being charming and confident was enough to rewrite reality. I called an old friend, Jim Kowalski, who'd retired from the OPP fraud division 5 years ago. Jim and I used to play hockey together, back when we still could. He'd help me with some HR investigations at the plant, employee theft cases, that sort of thing. Tommy, he said when he picked up. Long time. How's retirement treating you? Not great, Jim. I need help. I told him everything. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he let out a low whistle. This Trevor kid sounds like a piece of work. You say he forged your signature on a $400,000 mortgage? And a promissory note. And probably other documents I don't even know about yet. Okay, here's what you do. File a police report with the OPP detachment in Aurelia. That's the jurisdiction for your cottage. Request it be forwarded to the fraud division. Then you need a forensic document examiner. I can give you a name, guy I used to work with. Best in Ontario. But Tommy, this is going to get expensive. Legal fees, expert witnesses, court costs. You prepared for that? I don't have much choice. There might be another way. Let me make some calls. See if any of my old colleagues want to take a look at this. Sometimes when it's this blatant, this messy, we can move faster than you'd think. 2 days later, I was sitting in a Tim Hortons in Aurelia, across from Detective Sarah Brennan from the OPP fraud division. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense way of talking. Mr. Howell, she said, opening a folder. I've reviewed your complaint. I've also pulled some records. Your stepson has an interesting history. What kind of history? He's been investigated twice for mortgage fraud. Once in 2018, once in 2021. Both cases were dropped due to insufficient evidence, but the pattern's there. He finds properties with multiple owners, manufactures documents, takes out loans, disappears with the money. Why wasn't he charged? The victims withdrew their complaints. In one case, it was his ex-wife. She didn't want to send him to jail. In the other, it was a business partner who settled privately. But this time, if you're willing to pursue it, we might have enough. I'm willing. Good. Because I pulled the mortgage application from First National Bank. The signature doesn't match your known signatures on file with the CRA. It's close, very close, but there are tells. The pressure points are wrong. The letter formation's slightly off. Trevor's good, but he's not perfect. She showed me the comparison. Side by side, my real signature versus the mortgage signature. I could barely tell them apart, but Detective Brennan pointed out the differences. The way the T and Tom curved differently. The loop in the H. Small things, but there. We'll need a full forensic analysis, she said. But I think we can prove forgery. The question is, where's the money? What do you mean? $400,000 doesn't just disappear. It went somewhere. Trevor's bank account, an offshore account, investments, property purchases. We find the money, we prove his intent. We show he never meant to pay back the mortgage, that this was theft from the start. How do we find it? We get a warrant, freeze his accounts. But I need you to understand, Mr. Howell. This is going to take time, months, maybe longer. And Trevor's going to fight. He's going to claim you're lying, that you're old and confused, that you did sign those documents and just forgot. He's going to make this ugly. He already has. Detective Brennan smiled grimly. Then let's make it uglier for him. The investigation moved slowly. Patricia Chen got the injunction, which froze any sale of the cottage for 90 days. The bank agreed to pause foreclosure proceedings while the fraud investigation was ongoing. Connor and Brielle, the tenants, hired their own lawyer and filed a motion claiming they were innocent parties who'd signed a legitimate lease and shouldn't be evicted without compensation. Everything was tangled, messy, expensive. I was burning through my savings on legal fees. I couldn't live at the cottage, so I was paying for a rented room in Barrie. Every day felt like standing on the dock, watching my life drift away piece by piece. Then Jim Kowalski called. Tommy, I did some digging. You remember I said Trevor's been investigated before? Yeah. Well, one of those investigations involved a woman named Rachel Prentice. She was his business partner in a property development deal in Mississauga. Trevor forged her signature on a construction loan, took the money, left her holding the debt. She almost went bankrupt. She settled with him privately, dropped the charges in exchange for him paying back half. Okay. I called Rachel, explained your situation. She wants to help. She never got over what Trevor did to her, and she's got documentation. Emails where Trevor talks about forging signatures, about manipulating documents. If we can use that as pattern evidence, show he's done this before, it strengthens your case. She'd testify? She would. But there's more. Rachel hired a private investigator 2 years ago, tried to track down where Trevor was hiding the money he stole from her. The PI found offshore accounts, shell companies. Trevor's been doing this for years, Tommy. Running scams, forging documents, stealing from people who trust him. Your case might be the one that finally sticks. Hope felt dangerous, but I let myself feel it anyway. The forensic document examiner, Dr. Andrew Park, confirmed what Detective Brennan had suspected. The signature on the mortgage documents was a forgery. He wrote a 30-page report detailing the analysis, the comparison points, the probability that Trevor had forged my signature. 97% certainty. The bank, faced with the evidence, agreed to void the mortgage. They'd pursue Trevor for the money he'd withdrawn, but they wouldn't foreclose on the cottage. That was the first real victory. Then Detective Brennan got her warrant. They froze Trevor's accounts, searched his condo in Toronto, found documents, hard drives, evidence of multiple frauds stretching back a decade, including, hidden in a locked filing cabinet, blank promissory notes with forged signatures. Mine, Rachel Prentice's, 2 other people I'd never heard of. Trevor was arrested on a Tuesday morning in late November. I wasn't there, but Detective Brennan called me right after. We got him, she said. Fraud, forgery, theft over 5,000. He's being held pending bail hearing. What happens now? Now we build the case for trial. And Mr. Howell, I think you're going to get your cottage back. The bail hearing was the following Friday. Patricia Chen and I sat in the courtroom in Barrie and watched Trevor, in an orange jumpsuit, stand before the judge. His lawyer argued he wasn't a flight risk, that he had community ties, that he should be released on bail pending trial. Detective Brennan argued the opposite. She presented the pattern of fraud, the offshore accounts, the multiple victims. She said Trevor had $400,000 unaccounted for, and the means to leave the country. The judge denied bail. Trevor looked back at me as they led him out of the courtroom. For a second, his mask slipped. No more charm, no more smile, just cold fury. Like I'd betrayed him instead of the other way around. Connor and Brielle, faced with the reality that their landlord was in jail for fraud and their lease was void, agreed to vacate the cottage within 2 weeks. Patricia negotiated with their lawyer. They'd get their first and last month's rent back from the seized assets, and they'd leave without further legal action. On a cold Saturday in early December, I stood on my dock again for the first time in 2 months. The loons were gone, flown south for the winter. The lake was gray and choppy. Snow was coming, the first real snow of the season. The cottage looked the same from outside, but inside it felt different. Emptier. I'd gotten my home back, but something had been taken that I couldn't name. Some sense of safety, maybe. Some belief that family meant protection instead of vulnerability. I built a fire in the fireplace, made coffee, sat in the chair by the window and looked out at the lake Helen had loved, the lake my parents had loved, the lake I'd thought would be mine until I died. Detective Brennan called in the afternoon. Thought you'd want to know. We found the money. Most of it, anyway. Trevor had it in a bank in the Cayman Islands. $360,000. The rest he spent on his condo, his car, his lifestyle. But we're seizing what's left. Some of it will go to the bank, some to the other victims. You won't get all of it back, but you'll get enough to cover your legal fees, and then some. Thank you, I said. Trevor's lawyer is talking about a plea deal. 2 years, maybe 3. He'll serve 18 months, probably less. I know that doesn't seem like justice, but it's something. It's more than I thought I'd get. After she hung up, I sat with that. 2 years in prison for stealing my home, my peace, my trust, for forging my name and trying to erase me. It didn't seem like enough. But then again, nothing would be enough. No sentence could give me back what I'd lost. Rachel Prentice called me a week later. We'd never met, but she'd been part of the case, her testimony part of the evidence. I wanted to thank you, she said, for not dropping the charges like I did, for seeing it through. Because of you, Trevor's finally facing consequences. Because of you, maybe he won't do this to someone else. I'm sorry he did it to you, I said. I'm sorry he did it to both of us, but I'm glad he stopped now. We talked for a while. She told me about the property development deal, about how Trevor had been charming and convincing, how she'd trusted him right up until the moment the bank called asking about the forged signatures, how she'd lost her savings, her business, almost her home, how she'd spent 3 years rebuilding. Do you think Helen knew? Rachel asked. Your wife. Do you think she knew what he was capable of? I'd been asking myself that same question for months. Helen had worried about Trevor. Yes, but she'd never said anything like this. She'd never warned me. Maybe she hadn't known. Or maybe she'd known and hoped love would change him. That being part of a real family, having a stepfather who cared, would be enough. I don't think she knew, I said finally. I think she hoped he'd grow out of it. Some people don't grow out of it, Rachel said. Some people just get better at hiding it. Christmas came. I spent it alone at the cottage. My daughter Sarah, Helen's daughter from the same first marriage, called from Vancouver. She was horrified when I told her what Trevor had done. She'd always been closer to her mother than to Trevor, had seen through his charm years ago. I told Mom, Sarah said. I told her Trevor was trouble, but she couldn't see it. She loved him too much. She loved you both. I know. But she loved him differently, like he was always one mistake away from being fixed. One conversation away from being the person she wanted him to be. And he used that. He used her love. Sarah, I need to ask you something. Was I wrong? To pursue this? To send him to prison? She was quiet for a moment. You didn't send him to prison, Dad. He sent himself. You just refused to be his victim. There's a difference. The case went to trial in March. Trevor pled guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence. 18 months in a federal prison in Kingston, probation after release. Restitution to all victims, to be paid from the seized offshore accounts and from any future earnings. I didn't go to the sentencing. Patricia Chen went on my behalf. She called me afterward. He made a statement, she said. Trevor. Said he was sorry. Said he'd made mistakes. Said he hoped his family could forgive him someday. Do you think he meant it? I think he meant he was sorry he got caught. I sold the cottage in April. I couldn't stay there anymore. Every room had memories now that felt contaminated. Trevor moving his tenants in, the fake mortgage payments I'd almost had to make, the police coming to remove him. I found a smaller place, a condo in Collingwood. Downsized, simplified, started over. The money from the cottage sale, combined with the restitution from Trevor's seized accounts, left me comfortable again. I wasn't rich, but I wasn't drowning either. I could breathe. On a warm day in May, I drove back to Lake Simcoe one last time. Parked on the public access road, walked down to the water. The new owners had already made changes. New dock, new boathouse, different colored shutters. It looked nice. It looked like someone else's home. I stood there for a while, watching the loons. They were back. The same pair, maybe, or different ones. It didn't matter. The lake kept going. The seasons kept turning. Life kept moving whether you were ready or not. I thought about Helen, about how she'd loved this place, how she'd wanted us to grow old here together, about how Trevor had taken that dream and twisted it into something ugly, but also about how, in the end, Helen would have wanted me to do exactly what I'd done. Stand up, fight back, refuse to be erased. I got back in my truck and drove to Collingwood, to my new condo, to whatever came next. The lake shrank in my rearview mirror, and I didn't look back.